we're good.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our guests. I am going to call to order the environmental meeting for May. If I could have a roll call, please.
Chair Rutledge,
Here.
Vice Chair Garcia.
Here.
Member Cahill.
Here.
Member Evans. Member LaPlante.
Here.
Member Covert. Here.
Thank you so much. As far as Chairwoman remarks, many thanks to Public Works and DOT for the tree planting that they did along the Great Western Trail over in West Chicago. What a beautiful morning we had to do that. And they had cleared out all of the invasive species and planted some native there. And the dirt was amazing. As a gardener, I'm like, oh my gosh. So thank you to everybody involved with that effort. We also will on May 18th for Blooming Fest in West Chicago, because Arboretum does tree studies and they identified West Chicago as needing more trees. There'll be a tree giveaway at their Blooming Fest on May 18th, downtown West Chicago. So spread your, they'll be giving away native species, I believe. I know I asked you this question before and I won't press you. You're giving me that look like, I don't know what they're giving away.
It's hazelnut, chokeberry,
Yeah.
I forget what the others.
Or redbud or serviceberry or anyway. So thanks everybody involved in those efforts as well. So this morning we have one person signed up for public comment. That would be Kay McKee.
Morning, everybody. First of all, thank you so much for those of you who are able to attend the design challenge. The kids did just a spectacular job with their models. Ian, thank you for all the presentations you gave on energy conservation and solar panel roofs and all that kind of stuff. It really made an impact, and we heard from the students how great it was. So thank you for your passion for solar power and solar energy. We had our garden market this past weekend, and several of you, I know Paula and Sheila, were able to come. Thank you. It was the best weather we've had in 9 years, garden market, so that helps. But the scope of the booths, we had 30 different booths. So Dark Skies, I know David's not here, but Dark Skies and the Bat Organization and lots of native trees and plants and shrubs. And we have food scrap amended compost still available. This is International Compost Awareness Week. So getting people to know more about the importance of compost and how it reduces methane gas, of course, and keeps our water quality clean. So those are really good things. Thanks also for Sheila and Cindy and Sam for coming to the recertification Earth Flag ceremony at Roselle. And we've got Westmont Library's Earth Flag ceremony coming up. The design challenge, you guys, the kids just got their awards. I'm telling you, of all the years, this was just an incredible year for the kids to learn a lot and work together and present so well. So we're grateful for all of you that you had time to come and see it. We have something very special coming up. Beverly, could you just explain what's coming up? Brand new.
So June 4th and 5th, we're working with Solar Landscaping, and they did some grant things through the federal government, and they're providing train the trainer training to high school CTE teachers, PLTW middle school teachers and high school teachers and science teachers on solar installation and how to train the trainer kind of thing. We still have spots available. Teachers are getting paid to do it, $150 a day, and they're getting some free equipment to take back to their schools to learn how to do this. That's June 4th and 5th at Scarce.
So we're real excited. And then we have a bunch of other Earth Flag ceremonies coming up this June and August. So keep an eye out for those. But if you haven't been to a recycling event, this Saturday, we're in Woodridge with the Rotary Club, and it's supposed to be raining. So hopefully it'll hold off till about 1 o'clock. That would be grateful. The 18th, we have 3 events. So if you have constituents who are wondering about paper shredding or where they can take things, we'd love to help direct them to get that done. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Kay. Next, I'll ask for a motion on the approval of minutes 24/14/25 from Tuesday, April 2nd. All in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry, comments or questions? Any corrections? All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Staff reports 24/14/26, the International Compost Awareness Week, as Kay mentioned.
Yes, so we are going to be doing a social media campaign. So we will be sharing on our DuPage platforms on Facebook and Twitter. And we've included several of the postings in your packet. So we're we would love it if you would share out on your own platforms as well.
And also, we're looking for a staff report about Grow Geo Chicagoland.
Yes, so we are working with the Citizens Utility Board and the Midwest Renewable Energy Association to really educate communities on geothermal. The program is not a group buy this time around. It's an education and then a contractor connection. So just trying to really start to get the word out and get things moving in the geothermal world. There's not a lot of contractors out there. So pairing a resident with an actual experienced contractor is the goal of the program.
Great, thank you, Joy. Next, a presentation on Priority Climate Action Plan for the Chicago Metropolitan Statistical Area 2024. And I believe Edith Beckra is going to give us that presentation. Good morning, Edith.
So
Yeah, you can,
Kevin.
or do you want to come over too, or?
Oh, sure. Edith is going to make the presentation. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kevin Burns. I'm the mayor of Geneva, Illinois. I'm chairman of the executive board of the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus, representing 275 communities throughout northeastern Illinois, and chairperson of the Environment Committee. Edith is the expert in all things environment and sustainability. We're honored to be here this morning to make this presentation, and we look forward to deflecting any questions you have.
Take it away. Just we'll ask to go over the slides.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Edith Macker. I'm Environment Director for the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus, and as Mayor Burns said, next slide, please. So the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant is a US EPA program. It comes out under the Inflation Reduction Act. It represents a $4.3 billion investment, which is the largest single climate investment ever. This is global, not just US history. This is the biggest single climate investment ever. And there's two parts to it. There's a phase one planning program, which is $250 million. That's not small money either. That's the one that we're just completing, or I should say we're in. We've completed the first step of it. Implementation followed very, very quickly, and you'll see the timeline here in a minute about calling for projects and then providing resources for the 4.3 billion, I guess 4.6 billion is the total program. So that's the overview of the program. Next slide. The program really meant to, I don't want to say catch up on climate, but the US really needs to move more quickly than we have been in the past several years. So the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant is aiming for, first of all, giving those planning support, planning documents to both regions and states. They are looking to fund very large scale transformative projects. So this is not the time to plod along with climate action, with mitigation, emissions reduction. They really want big transformative projects that wouldn't be able to be funded otherwise. And they have a particular focus under the Biden administration's Justice 40 initiative and really understanding the risks and benefits to what they're calling low income and disadvantaged communities. The whole field of environmental justice is evolving very quickly, but recognition that there are communities of color, communities that have been historically left behind. There's a lot of names for them: environmental justice, frontline communities. But the US EPA provided lots of resources and tools to really help those of us doing the plans understand where low income and disadvantaged communities are, to try to plan out where the benefits could then accrue to those communities. Next slide. And so the planning grants, that's the phase that we're currently in, but the Priority Climate Action Plan is completed. So these grants, they were formula grants. And to those of you not versed in government geekitude, that means it's non-competitive. That means that every state was offered a $3 million planning grant, and then they picked 67 of the largest metropolitan statistical areas or regions to receive $1 million grant. And because the states in gray turned the funding down, they reshifted a little bit. And in total, there were 81 81, no comment on Florida, just saying. But they shifted the funding to provide resources for these metropolitan statistical areas. And not to boast, but we did have communications with the US EPA after the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus completed a regional climate action plan. We were only the third in the US in 2021. We did hear from the US EPA that they were looking into that regional model of looking at metropolitan areas. And so the structure that they settled on was a metropolitan statistical area or an MSA, because those are consistent across the country. So the idea of regional planning seems to make sense in addition to state level planning. They provided tremendous amount of structure for the plan, which is good particularly for the communities and for the states and regions that had no climate planning experience. And that really was most of the state. So as I said, we did our third regional, our plan, which was the third in the US. There are now, I think it's 96% of the US is now covered in these, in some form of a climate action plan. So they provided structure. They are focusing on greenhouse gas emissions reduction, basically reduction of fossil fuel consumption and all the clean energy that goes with that. They are not looking at climate adaptation. US EPA, because of the authorities, really can only regulate pollution. That's why the name is climate pollution, but that comes under the Clean Air Act. But it allowed the US EPA to move forward in a very big way. And then just a nod to US EPA, providing so much structure and support. They really provided a lot of tools to help complete plans of a very solid quality on a dizzying timeline, which is coming up in the next slide here. So next slide. And so the timeline, this is being the largest program on climate investment ever in US history, and then having a short cycle in which to get this done is really the challenge here. Not only do we have to catch up, but the Biden administration is looking at a possible change in administration. And so the agency is moving very, very quickly to get funding out the door, provide the support. And so what they did, design the program, provided funding. Our grant began last June, although for administrative reasons, we got our funding in January, and the priority climate action plan was due March 1st. So in that period of time, the USA was dizzying, and the US EPA gave us tons of tools. We've had about 3 or 4 webinars a week providing technical assistance to get all this work done, again, in a format that they needed, which included a greenhouse gas emissions inventory, which included prioritizing strategies for emissions reduction, included that analysis of low-income and disadvantaged communities, plus community engagement, which was just really hard for everyone to do. But it's done and underway. That priority climate action plan enabled every jurisdiction covered by that plan. So in our metropolitan statistical area, every agency that wanted to apply for the implementation grant funding could, but it had to align with our plan, which means our plan had to align with everyone's intentions or desires. So that was really tricky. And there was a 1 month, if you notice that, March 1st to April 1st was time that was really allowed for coordination and to get some really big grant applications in. Following and that of course is completed as well. Next up is the comprehensive climate action plan. So while this first priority climate action plan was done very quickly, it's time to take a breather once those applications for grant funding are underway and some initial projects are begun. There's time to take a more comprehensive view of climate action planning. And Mayor Burns and I are very pleased to partner with the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning to do that project, that comprehensive climate action plan, as a contractor to the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus. They are, of course, the planning experts. We grabbed the PCAP because of our nimbleness and because of the fact that we have a climate action plan under our belt. But CMAP will be doing that planning, and they feel like it's a really tight timeline. I feel like they've got a lot more time, but that's due in June of next year. And then there's funding and check-in period. So as the CPRG implementation grants are underway, there's reporting out, and the project will conclude in October 2029. So quick upfront planning, let's get this together, let's figure out what to do, a lot of funding, and then some time to get it done. So a very, very interesting high-level program. Next slide, please. So to those of you, Mayor Burns and I presented before on our climate action plan for the Chicago region. So this is the existing plan that we had. And this one was the one that I said we did the first one. This is only the third regional climate action plan in the US. It was the largest of any regions attempted. We did this, completing the project in 2021. And we did this, it was a very exciting project in partnership with the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy. So we had mentorship from the European Union, who provided support. We worked with a couple of other regions, including the Kansas City region and then Metro Washington region. And we did this notably during the pandemic for public engagement, but had really good input into this project. And we had 16 months to get the project done. The Mayor's Caucus did this in our own template, our own format to serve our municipal members. So the entire plan is framed for municipal action because that is our membership. That's who was leading on climate at the time. And we knew that cities could get it done. So everything that we designed in this plan is focused around municipal, what we call them levers, or the ability of municipalities to take climate action by leadership, through encouraging others, other constituents, as we're talking about some of the things that Kay and Scaris are doing for education and encouragement, and then to enact codes and policies. The climate action plan for the Chicago region, the pre-existing one, does include climate adaptation. This was the first time there was a climate risk and vulnerability assessment for the Chicago metro region. Very informative, and the plan is rooted in equity. So we took some of those early steps without all the tools that the US EPA gave us to make sure that both climate mitigation and climate adaptation were rooted in equity. So that's the pre-existing plan, and we thought this was going to be an easy slide into the priority climate action plan, and it wasn't exactly that easy, but it's done. So next slide, please. So then the priority climate action plan for the Chicago metropolitan statistical area. So it took some elements of our plan, but put it into a template that the US EPA was looking for, again, for consistency across the US with 46 states and 81 regions. This had to expand beyond the municipal focus. So we no longer could just be looking at municipalities. And some of the big areas of emissions, which was kind of exciting to pick up, were areas like industry. Most municipalities don't have influence on what industry chooses to do. But if you start to engage with those sectors, you can see more results on emissions. Same is true of freight. So those were some of the largest sources of emissions that we looked at providing more influence on through the Priority Climate Action Plan, or PCAP. As I mentioned, there needed to be this alignment with this Climate Pollution Reduction Grant, or CPRG, implementation grant. So we had to identify priority strategies that would, at the request of those who wanted to apply or that we thought were worthwhile, we pulled some of those strategies out and had to dig in and say, what would the emissions reduction be? So we had to do a lot more modeling. We had to do the analysis of the low-income communities identified, and it's huge, I'll tell you that. And then notably, the region is much bigger. So the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus serves 7 counties in the Chicago metro area. The Chicago MSA picks up portions of Wisconsin and Indiana. So we had to do multi-state coordination and then coordination across counties. And some of those counties, Newton County in Indiana is all rural. The emissions mix coming from Northwest Indiana for the steel mills was incredibly different. So the emissions reductions from the industry was huge, as well as from freight, which was why it was exciting. So it really changed our perspective. It sort of stretched urban, rural. We've got Grundy County, we've picked up DeKalb, parts of Kenosha, which has just a very different structure. Some of the utilities have programs in Illinois. There's none in Indiana. So it was, as the US EPA described in setting up the MSA design, they said it's going to be messy, and they were right. It was messy, but it was exciting to stretch and think about the Chicago metro area in a more holistic way. So this is the Priority Climate Action Plan that was done March 1. Next slide, please. And just a close up on the low income and disadvantaged communities. So this is, I really want more communities and more leaders to recognize how large and diverse low income and disadvantaged community LIDAC. It's not exactly a designation, but it's a ranking. The US EPA provides a lot of tools. But look at how peppered that is throughout the region. So yes, you see in the south and southeast side of Chicago, as would be expected. But look at regions of DuPage County for sure, and then look at the rest of the regions. And we're finding low income and disadvantaged communities throughout. And the real advantage to knowing and asserting that LIDAC designation or status is the fact that the Justice 40 initiative is looking at prioritizing those areas for investment. So Joy and I worked together on a recycling and education grant. DuPage County provided some excellent preliminary analysis to show how diverse these low income and disadvantaged communities are, because it's really important in securing those funds to make sure that they're included and that the solutions are designed for those communities. As I said, Newton County, mostly rural, but the whole county there, that big pink block in the lower portion of the slide is a rural agricultural county. The whole county is considered LIDAC. And this analysis was done by CMAP on contract for the plan. Next slide, please. So then now that the PCAP is done, again, 1 month to get it all together, and then the coordination, each of these agencies that you see listed there who applied for phase 2 implementation grants, CMAP and the Mayor's Caucus worked together to try to support and coordinate conversations from these applicants. Mayor Burns led an environment committee meeting where we discussed these. We had sort of a Shark Tank style project pitch from the different applicants, just to vet what applicants could go forward. And the Mayor's Caucus had to write the plan to allow all of these projects to move forward, and we had to model the emissions reductions for these. So leading is the Kane County Coalition, which DuPage County was a part of, and that was a lot of community scale projects, some county scale projects that were a collaboration of small on-site capital investment projects and then education projects going forward. So that application went in seeking CPRG funds by April 1st. Another large one came from Cook County and Chicago. I think I should say the brackets were anywhere from, the smallest grant was 2 million or 10 million, up to 500 million. So they were enormous grants. Cook County and Chicago collaborated targeting industrial emissions, and then looking to develop a food waste biodigester to up their food waste capacity and reduce emissions that way. There was a really exciting project that came from led by Wheaton Sanitary District that looked at, they brought 10 other wastewater agencies together under an umbrella collaborative project to capture biogas and convert it, clean it into renewable natural gas for reuse to go through the existing pipelines for energy generation. The RTA put in an application for many of their service boards looking at transit electrification for various parts of their fleet, including trains and buses. And then the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus, we were allowed to put in a project, and we did. It was kind of, the CPRG was looking for grants or projects that hadn't been funded under any other IRA programs or didn't really have a home. And we picked landscape equipment electrification, which was a smallish grant. That was a $37 million request, again, partnering with DuPage County and other solid waste agencies to look at buying back landscape equipment for both residential and commercial users, and then replacing those, destroying them so that they cannot be reused, thereby reducing the emissions and then converting to electric landscape equipment. This dovetails on some discomfort that many communities are sensing about leaf blower noise. So that's where that comes from. But it turns out they're a high source of emissions, including air pollution. And it has a really strong LIDAC benefit because of the operators of that equipment are often persons of color. The state of Illinois also completed a PCAP. This is the first ever climate action plan for the state of Illinois. Theirs was also done very, very quickly, and they put in a whopper of a project, $500,000 the maximum, with a lot of pass-through projects and planning grants, which is what their strategy was. We're supposed to all hear in June, late June, July, we're supposed to hear what the decisions are, and they're saying contracts will be in place in October. So that's incredibly quick. So that's implementation. Remember, that is a priority planning done, allows the implementation grants. get going on those projects. In the meantime, in the background, CMAP and the other states and regions are working feverishly on the comprehensive climate action plan. So that planning process will begin. The kickoff meeting for an advisory committee, stakeholder committee, is June 11th. And that has much more stakeholder engagement than we were able to do with the priority one. So again, watch for opportunities to provide input into that plan. It feels like a longer time. I think they said there's only time for 5 or 6 steering committee meetings. So pulling from Indiana, pulling from our own region, trying to get those diverse voices in. It's still a quick process, but that plan should be really solid. So it's kind of 3 steps up if you'll follow along from our initial plan, municipally focused, limited in terms of its region. This one being a larger region, picking up the priority one being a larger region, picking up other industries, and then the comprehensive one being full-on analysis, including a jobs workforce analysis, which is a required component of that. And then we'll I'll check in. The US EPA is going to want us to hear how we're doing in 2027. That is the plan. Presentation I have. So does anybody have any questions?
Questions, anybody? Member LaPlante?
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Something that you said at the beginning, you said, we're not behind, but we need to move faster in addressing all of these issues. Can you please speak more to the differentiation between those 2 things? Because the way I see it, especially as a member of this environmental committee, we are behind. And I think it's very, 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 very important that we don't ever even remotely use language that minimizes the threat that we are all facing due to climate change and environmental impacts. So I just want to turn the gas up as opposed to bring it down. And I just want to make sure that all these young kids in the room hear that some of us think we are behind, not that we just need to move faster. We should have been here a long time ago. And I feel very strongly about that. Can you please speak to that?
I will agree with you. And I apologize if I said we're not behind. We are very much behind.
Okay.
I was trying not to be political. We lost a lot of ground in the previous administration. So I was trying not to be political there, but our level of action at the national level is far behind. That was one of the reasons that we were, the key reason that we were picked up and were allowed to work with the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy. And the honest approach from that was when the federal administration stepped out of the Paris Agreement, the rest of the world panicked, the industry philanthropy panicked, and then said, what can we do? So there was a movement and a momentum to say, who else can take leadership on climate? And that's when the Mayor's Caucus had an opportunity to compete for that mentorship with the Global Covenant of Mayors. So I apologize if I misspoke on that, and thank you for catching me on that. That's certainly not the intention. Like I said, I was trying to soften a little bit
And
any criticism, but no, with the fact that, and a little bit of the policy on why US EPA is stepping this up. Does anyone remember the what was it called under the Obama administration? The Clean Air, it was under the
Clean Air Act.
but it was the climate pollution reduction. They were trying to regulate CO2 emissions under the Clean Air Act. What's the name of it? Apologies here. But it was a fight in the courts. So that was the authority to allow US EPA to regulate climate pollution as a pollutant. That was beaten down in the courts in the previous administration, and that's when we lost ground. Then we had an administration that did not at all support climate action, and we just lost a huge amount of ground. So no,
Yeah, and
I take that back, and that's one of the reasons that you see that incredible pace for this planning. US EPA was spoon feeding all of these regions. I had a really fascinating opportunity to speak to the National League of Cities on climate pollution reduction grant planning, and they paired me with a metropolitan statistical area from South Dakota that still was facing climate denial. They'd never done anything on climate. So you have the Mayor's Caucus with the Chicago region leading on climate planning, and then this itsy bitsy metropolitan region that never had the conversation before. And we're all on the same path and trajectory. So it's
Move
fascinating.
you forward a little bit because,
Yeah.
first of all, does anybody have any old business? Thank you for your comments, and I'll give you no old business. Okay, under new business, I actually have an issue. We received an email from a constituent Apparently in Waukegan, there was a big article in the Tribune last week about them basically shaming people who are not properly recycling. I've talked to a couple people that say they didn't quite get that. But I did want to bring that up under new business because some of that is, this grant money that's coming and things like that. So, can you speak to that a little bit for us?
Recycling?
Yeah, she's like, all right, what are y'all doing to improve recycling rates? And yes, we're doing things here, but as a region or as a county, I thought it would be a good resource for that question.
Yeah, thanks for that. And not specifically addressing, kind of the action there, but I will talk about, we have expert Joy in the room here who teaches me most of what I know about recycling education, as well as Kay here. But the US EPA had another grant program for recycling education. There's an understanding that recycling is very complicated. It varies by market. It varies by hauler. People don't understand what goes in the bin, what doesn't. There's issues called wish cycling. It's difficult to get people to do it right. Then you get frustrated when you find out that maybe things aren't being recycled as you thought they would. So the US EPA put out a grant opportunity for recycling education and outreach. It's called RIO grant. The Mayor's Caucus partnered with DuPage County, Kane County, solid waste agencies, 6.
County,
Swank, Swalco,
Henry County.
McHenry is in it. And then Will County. So we kind of worked together. Everybody has the same problem, and we submitted and secured a grant to do recycling education and outreach collaboratively. So the program is really just focused on engagement. So the project is a 3-year project. $2 million. $2 million over 3 years, and it is supporting outreach and education and a variety of mediums, electronic, digital, advertising, mailing, multilingual, targeting the LIDAC communities, and then providing a resource person to do outreach and education, basically to the kinds of things that we see scarce doing to do that regionally. So there's support for that. And that is aimed to address, we've got metrics that we need to report in terms of the reduction of what they call contaminants, or when people put the wrong thing, the garden hose into the recycling bin, which just ends up tangling and messing up the sorting equipment and plastics and a lot of the messiness that we see in this. So that is the intention, is to help make that a little bit easier through aggressive outreach.
Now we have more information to give to that constituent, so I was waiting for this committee. Patty, you had something you wanted to ask?
Yeah, Patty Guston, former Naperville City Councilwoman. I will tell you that the cities can participate in doing some ordinance changes to be able to go more green. The one question I have, 2 questions. One is, we should have our haulers put stickers on the recycle under lid so people can see what they should be putting in the recycle bin. I've been saying it for years. Nobody listens, but now we
Some
have
do.
money.
There are some.
Now, if we have money to do that, hopefully that'll get done where these haulers can actually put it inside their garbage can, the recycle
Oh,
can,
okay.
so people know what it is. That's number one. Number 2 is,
Just
after a lot of years of, investigating and being on the city council and here on the county board, what has the country done to help educate other countries or provide some type of communications? Because I have friends in India, China, you name it, all across the world, that they're not doing anything with respect to cleaner air or climate change or anything. They're doing nothing. And so the reality is that we can do as much as we can do, and we're doing all the great stuff. But if we don't get other countries to buy in, what are we doing? And so that's been my stick for a while now. Once I realized that we're doing more than other countries. Yes, we can always do more, but the reality is it's up here. It's like, what are other countries willing to do? Who can open those communications, conversations, and how does that get done? And obviously that's at a much higher political level, because those are where those conversations go, or maybe even not political level, but something needs to happen on that end. Otherwise, we're just gonna hit our heads against the wall. Do you know of
Yeah,
anything
and
like
I
that
don't like that
happening?
either, because people are always like, well, I'm not gonna recycle because other people are not
Exactly,
recycling, and that's.
exactly.
uh,
So have we gotten anything from our administration to say they're gonna start this process of sharing what we know with other countries that we know are?
That's a really tough.
I
I need you
Sorry,
to stay for
too
quorum.
complicated.
All right, yeah, I gotta, okay, I'm sorry, Patty,
No, that's
valuable
fine, that's
information,
fine.
but I actually have to appoint you to our committee so we
So,
can
there we go.
finalize our, so, Patty Guston, under the authority of the county board rules, I appoint Patty to serve as a temporary member of this committee. May I have a motion?
So moved.
No.
No motion? Okay, so you're in.
Okay.
Any other new business? Without objection, we're adjourned. So thank you for that, Patty.
You're welcome.